Potatoes hold a legendary spot as one of the most rewarding crops you can grow in a backyard garden, and a single seed potato can return 10 or more pounds of harvest. But here is the thing about potatoes. Despite how forgiving they look, they are surprisingly easy to mess up in ways you will not notice until harvest day. I have personally made just about every potato growing mistake you can imagine. And today I'm going to walk you through 10 of those mistakes that I would absolutely never repeat. The first mistake is planting potatoes you grab from the grocery store instead of certified seed potatoes. I get the appeal. They are cheap and you already have them sitting in the kitchen. But conventional table potatoes are sprayed with a chemical sprout inhibitor called chlorpropham, often sold under the trade name Budnip, that interferes with cell division at the eyes. They will either fail to emerge entirely or send up weak, stunted shoots that die a few inches above the soil. Worse, they can carry latent viruses and late blight spores that survive in your soil for decades. So the move here is simple. Buy certified seed potatoes from a reputable supplier every single year. They cost about the same and they actually grow. Mistake number two is preparing your seed pieces wrong. Most growers sprout potatoes in a dark cabinet and then cut and plant them on the same day. Both moves are quiet disasters. Sprouting in darkness causes etiolation, where shoots become long, pale, and so brittle they snap off the moment you handle them. And freshly cut seed pieces planted into cool, damp soil rot before they ever wake up. The fix takes patience. Chit your potatoes in indirect light at 7 to 12 degrees Celsius for 4 to 6 weeks until the sprouts are short, stocky, and almost purple in color. Then, after cutting, let the pieces sit in a single layer at 60 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 to 3 days, so the wounds form a waxy protective layer called suberin. Now they are ready to plant. Mistake number three is rushing your seed pieces into the ground the moment a warm afternoon shows up in early spring. I understand the instinct. Every gardener wants the first harvest on the block, but potatoes will not start moving until the soil itself reaches at least 45 degrees Fahrenheit, ideally closer to 50. Below that threshold, the seed piece is metabolically asleep, but the soil-borne fungi around it are wide awake. They feed on the seed piece and rot it before a single shoot ever forms. Stick a soil thermometer 4 inches deep at 8 in the morning and wait for 3 consecutive readings above 45. That is the green light. In most northern gardens, this means waiting until 2 to 3 weeks before your last frost date, not chasing the first sunny weekend in March. Mistake number four is watering your potatoes on a feast or famine schedule. Tubers form in roughly the top foot of soil, and that zone needs to stay evenly moist from flowering through bulking. When the soil dries out hard and then gets soaked, the tubers expand in unpredictable spurts. You end up with hollow heart, where the center of the potato has a hollow cavity, plus knobby growths and skin cracks that invite disease. Even worse, oxygen-starved soils cause the tiny pores on the tuber skin, called lenticels, to swell and split open, giving bacterial soft rot a perfect entry wound that can liquefy a tuber in days. Aim for 1 to 2 inches of water per week, delivered through deep soakings rather than light daily sprinkles. Then taper off completely about 2 weeks before harvest so the skin has a chance to toughen up. Mistake number five, and this is probably the most widespread error happening right now, is broadcasting fertilizer across the surface of your bed before planting. That advice gets repeated everywhere because it works for crops like corn and lettuce with spreading root systems. But potatoes are different. Their roots are shallow and concentrated near the seed piece, and phosphorus is almost completely immobile in soil. Scatter it on top, and most of it never reaches the roots at all. In fact, some Maine soils contain a half-ton of phosphorus per acre, with almost none of it plant available. The fix is called banding. Place your fertilizer in a concentrated strip, 2 to 3 inches to the side and slightly below the seed piece. Banded phosphorus delivers equal or better yields with up to 50% less total fertilizer. Mistake number 6 is failing to hill your potato plants properly. Hilling is not a cosmetic chore. It is a biological requirement. Potatoes do not grow on the roots. They form on horizontal underground stems called stolons, and stolons will only swell into tubers if they remain in complete darkness. Expose them to even a sliver of sunlight, and they revert to producing useless leafy shoots. Worse, any tuber that pokes above the soil turns green and synthesizes glycoalkaloids like solanine and sheckenine, which are toxic to humans and can cause headaches and gastrointestinal distress. Start hilling when your plants reach 6 to 8 inches tall, mounding soil up around the stems. Repeat every 2 to 3 weeks until you have built a hill 6 to 8 inches deep along the row. The buried stem section is where every single tuber will form. Mistake number 7 is reaching for the same insecticide every time you spot a Colorado potato beetle. These beetles are world champions at developing resistance. Spray the same chemical group repeatedly, and you breed a local population that completely shrugs it off within a single season. Hand-pick adults and crush egg masses on site, and only spray when you actually exceed the action threshold of 1 adult or 4 small larvae per plant. When you do spray, rotate between insecticide groups with different modes of action. A pyrethroid this round, then a neonicotinoid next time. And do not panic over a little leaf damage. Potato plants can lose up to 30% of their foliage during the vegetative stage with no impact on final tuber yield. So the urge to spray at first sight is almost always premature. Mistake number 8 trips up gardeners with small plots, and it is planting potatoes in the same bed year after year, or worse, planting them where you grew tomatoes or peppers last summer. Potatoes share a botanical family with tomatoes, peppers, and eggplants, all in the Solanaceae or nightshade family. They also share the same suite of soil pathogens, including verticillium wilt, early blight, and the fungus that causes potato scab. These spores can survive in the soil for years without a host. Plant a nightshade into that bed next season, and you have rolled out a welcome mat for early dying syndrome, where the crop looks healthy in May and collapses by July. Stick to a strict 3 to 4 year rotation between nightshade crops. Follow potatoes with beans, brassicas, or alliums, all of which break the cycle. Mistake number 9 is harvesting your potatoes before the skins have set. New potatoes dug fresh are a treat, but if you want any kind of storage life, the skin needs time to thicken and bond firmly to the flesh. The trigger for that process is the death of the vines above ground. Once the foliage yellows and dies back, leave the tubers in the ground for another 10 to 14 days. During that window, the skin matures from a thin scrape-off layer into a tough, protective barrier. If you dig too early, you get skinning, where large patches of skin rub off in your hands. Those wounds are open invitations for fusarium dry rot and pythium leak, both of which can liquefy a tuber within weeks of going into storage. Patient harvest equals long storage. And the 10th mistake is throwing your harvest straight into the refrigerator or stacking it next to the onion bin in the pantry. This one surprises people because cold seems safer for keeping things fresh, but potatoes stored below 40 degrees Fahrenheit undergo a process called cold-induced sweetening, where stored starch converts into glucose and fructose. Fry those sugar-loaded potatoes, and the sugars react with amino acids during the Maillard reaction to produce acrylamide, a probable human carcinogen, along with bitter, dark-colored chips. The solution is beautifully simple. Cure your harvested potatoes for 2 to 3 weeks at 60 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit to heal harvest wounds. Then, store them in a dark, well-ventilated space at 40 to 45 degrees Fahrenheit, never colder, and keep them far away from onions and apples, whose ethylene gas wakes dormant tubers and triggers premature sprouting within days. And those are 10 potato growing mistakes that, once you correct them, you will see a dramatic difference in the size, quality, and storage life of your harvest. Every season is a chance to grow bigger and better than the year before. So get out there, put these lessons to work, and enjoy the best potato harvest of your life.